Last week and this week, we are learning a little bit more about our neighbors who have different faith traditions. And specifically, we are talking about the Abrahamic religions, those that originated with Abraham. Now, I know we all recognize that they originated with God, but the forefather of Islam and Judaism and Christianity is Abraham. Prior to Abraham, people were mostly polytheistic, which means they had many gods that they worshipped. And Abraham was the first to really bring together people in recognition of one God, to worship the one true God. In that society, Abraham saying that there was only one God, well, that would have been considered weak. Wait, what? You only have one God? But Abraham recognized the one true God, and he was the catalyst for all who would worship Yahweh or Elohim or Allah. He was the one that brought people together. In the world today, 55% of the world's population worship the one true God, either Muslim, Jewish, or Christian. Christianity is, well, kind of like a descendant of Judaism. After all, Jesus Christ was Jewish. And most, if not all of his followers would have been Hebrew people. And in fact, when the disciples went out to go and teach about the Christ way, most of the people that they talked to would have been Jewish. And it was only when Paul said, I will preach to the Gentiles, that it started to be opened up to so many more. And we celebrate in the Christian church some of the traditions and some of the festivals of the Jewish people, albeit in a little different way. In fact, when we have communion, we recognize the Last Supper that Jesus would have had with his disciples. And that Last Supper was Passover, a Jewish faith tradition. And if you've been to one of our Seder meals, we explore that in greater detail, and we talk about the significance of that meal, not only for the Jewish people, but for us, and how this fits into our heritage. So how do we interact with our Jewish neighbors? In the past, unfortunately, there has been some animosity. Christians who would reach out with hatred instead of love, charging the Jewish people with the crucifixion of Christ. But we recognized that it was all people who caused the crucifixion of Christ, all people who were responsible, not just the Jewish people. And so we are also called to take responsibility for that. Today, we are mostly cordial with our Jewish friends and neighbors, but for many of us, there's still some uncertainty. We don't know what their tradition means or what the important tenets are of their religion. I want to talk to you today about just one. It's called Shabbat. And it started for Jewish people around the world, it started yesterday. It's a festival that has great significance, and it's very meaningful for the Jewish people. And it has a double significance. It marks the all-important wheat harvest that we hear about in Exodus 34. And it also commemorates the anniversary of when God gave the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, to the people of Israel on Mount Sinai. Just as Ramadan commemorates the giving of God, the laws and the customs of the Muslim people on Ramadan, Shabbat recognizes this giving of wisdom and law to the Jewish people. The Torah mandates the 7-week counting of Omer, which is an important verbal counting of the 49 days between the Jewish holidays of Passover and Shabbat. as stated in the Hebrew Bible. It says in Exodus, "And from the day after the Sabbath, from the day on which you bring the sheaf of the elevation offering, you shall count off 7 weeks. They shall be complete. You shall count until the day of the 7th Sabbath, 50 days. Then you shall present an offering of new grain to the Lord." The omer was a measure of grain that was used in agriculture and commerce in the times of Abraham. The counting of the days and weeks is understood to be an express anticipation and desire for getting the Torah, a remembrance of that, important day for them. On Passover, the Jewish people were freed from their enslavement to Pharaoh. And on Shabbat, they were given the Torah. So you are bookended by these two really important, significant things in the life of the Hebrew people. And the Torah, they were given this gift, but they were also becoming recommitted to a nation that served the one God. The word Shabbat actually means the weeks, the 7 weeks. And in keeping with the themes of spiritual growth for the Hebrew people and character development for this period, Jewish literature compares the process of growth to the 2 types of grain offered at either end of this counting period. During Passover, the people were to bring an offering of barley, and at the end, they were to bring an offering of wheat. In ancient times, barley was the simpler food, and wheat was more elevated. So there was growth there. There was more significance there. The Exodus was an unearned gift from God. And likewise, the Torah was an unearned gift from God. Both were for the Hebrew people. Both showed the love of God for his people. Both showed that he cared for them and wanted them to be well and to be healthy. The customs of Shabbat highlight the custom for the continuation and the preservation of Jewish religious observance. And there are 5 customs. First of all, there is Akdamut. Am I saying that right? He's the Hebrew expert. I didn't have to take Hebrew. And this is a reading of this liturgical poem during Shabbat morning services. And I'm not going to read it to you because, first of all, there are 90 verses. And second of all, it's in Hebrew. But it's important to know that the poem is emphatic in not only its wording, but in the way it is structured, that the people must continue to study the scriptures of God. They must continue to study the Torah and to be renewed and refreshed by this study. The second thing is halaf, which means milk. And they are consuming dairy products like milk and cheese. And it commemorates the commandment, "Bring first the fruits of your hand to the house of God your Lord. Do not cook a kid in its mother's milk," we find in Exodus. Since the first day is to bring the first fruits, the barley or the wheat. And the second half, it refers to this, you can only eat the meat and the milk separately, as is the Jewish custom of keeping kosher. The third thing is Yachar, and it is the decoration of homes and synagogues with greenery. That sounds vaguely familiar, doesn't it? And then the fourth is Torah, studying all night. They would read the Torah from beginning to end over and over and over again, as long as it was dark. And finally, during Shabbat, the book of Ruth is read, which is why we read the first chapter of Ruth today. Ruth is my favorite book of the Old Testament. And it's read during Shavuot because, first of all, King David, who was Ruth's descendant, was born and died on Shavuot. And also because most of the book of Ruth talks about the grain harvest, which is what Shavuot is known for. And a central theme, and the most important reason that Ruth is read, is that there is this overwhelming sense of hesed, which is what this word is, loving kindness. And here's where I'd like to pick up what we can take away from this festival and from the teachings of the Jewish tradition. This is a time for them to study the Word of God, to become immersed in it. And I think we can only benefit the more we read the Scriptures. This is a time of turning back to God, of turning to God and coming to God from afar. And I know that all of us in our lives have felt very removed from God. But we need to come back into a relationship with Him. And even if we feel we are close, I know that we always wish we were closer. We wish we knew what God wanted for us in our lives. We wish we knew how God would structure the life we are going to live. And this is a time that we can actively commemorate our faith and to conscientiously read our Bible. A time to recognize God's gift to us in His Word. A time for us to recognize God's many gifts to us. This commemorates the harvest, a thanksgiving for having food. And we, in a country where we do not have to go to bed hungry, need to give thanks over and over again to God for that very fact. Commemorate His blessings and His gift to us. Most significantly for me, though, is this promise of hesed, this loving kindness. And it's a Hebrew word, which means, and it's translated in different ways, loving kindness, kindness, or love. And hesed is central to Jewish ethics. It is the core of the ethics of Jewish theology. And it is a common term in the Bible for describing God's love for humanity. Grace and compassion are two words that also hesed is translated as. As Rabbi Simon the Just taught, the world rests on these three things: Torah, service to God, and bestowing kindness. Just as Jesus said to us, the first commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. Love for all of our neighbors, Christian or Jewish or Muslim. Jesus did not differentiate. He didn't segregate. He didn't say love some more than others. He said love your neighbor as yourself. Our neighbor, showing them hesed, showing them loving kindness by saying thank you, or I appreciate you, or I love you, not just to those we know, but to those we come in contact with. Saying thank you to the clerk in the grocery store, saying I appreciate you to your doctor or caregiver. And as I've been thinking about these faith traditions, I wanted to give you a visual. Can we have the next slide, please? I was sitting the other night, late afternoon, no, early evening, in my hot tub, and I love my hot tub, you know that. But it is where I have the greatest conversations with God. And this is the picture that I see when I sit in the hot tub. And the beauty of these three trees was, it really struck me this week. Their shapes and their colors are so vibrant and so different. The one that is on the right is a stunning Japanese maple. And it's the one that is in my backyard, and I absolutely love this tree. The leaves are this beautiful, vibrant, deep red, and the trunk, well, actually, it's many trunks. It sprawls out of the ground and creates this lush canopy. And right behind, or sort of beside it, is that tall, majestic spire of blue spruce, which is in my neighbor's backyard. Its blue-green needles are dense and tight, and it rises up straight and tall, pointing to the sky. And over to the left of that is this beautiful, lovely tree that is in my neighbor's yard. And I have to confess, I don't know what it is. I'm not an arborist. But it has these beautiful yellowy green, frondy, wispy leaves, and the trunk comes up and it's gnarled, and then it spreads. And there's a certain delicate loveliness to it. And as I looked at this picture, I could not help but think of these as the 3 faith traditions that Abraham started. They all begin in the same place, in the rich soil of the earth that God has given us. The rich soil of the earth that God has given us to be stewards of. And they all need the air, the breath of God, the ruach of God, in order to survive. And yes, I know that they provide the oxygen that we need for life. God has given us this gift for us to have life and breath. And all of these reach towards the heaven. One Son, one true God, but each is expressed in different ways, lovely ways, vibrant red, cool blue, and wonderful wispy yellow. Are any of them any less lovely than the others? By day, you can see the delineation between them. You can see the differences. But as I sat in the hot tub, as the twilight came, as the sun left the sky, their outlines merged. Can I have the next slide? And all you can see, all there was evidence of, was their blending and meshing together. The black against the beautiful blue-gray of twilight of heaven. We are all the same. We are all human. We are all created by a loving God, created unique and beautiful and wonderful. Can we recognize the beauty in each other? Can we recognize the significance and the importance of other faith traditions and have it speak to us of things that we can take heed of? Can we mesh and meld together in loving kindness rather than pulling apart in our fear and mistrust? Maybe one day, if we're all committed to that. Maybe one day we can fulfill the prayer that Jesus prayed on his last days on earth. All mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I have been glorified in them. And now I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, protect them in your name as you have given me, so that they may be one, as we are one. As you, Father, are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. The glory that you have given me as I have given them, so that they may be as one as we are one, I in them and you in me. That they may be and become completely one, so that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them even as you loved me. Amen.